Hey everyone, Dave Dr. Sharkbecker here with another video taking a look at my DVD collection. Specifically, I guess, I might call it like a case, a DVD case of films from the 1960s. So, one of the interesting things about this decade, I was looking through it, there's quite a few movies in here I have not seen yet. But there's also some real classics in here. So let's get started. Okay, these are again all in alphabetical order. The 10th Victim, I have not seen that. An Italian, was it Polizia crime film? I believe that's what it is, and I have not seen that one yet. This one I have seen. As a matter of fact, it is my all-time favorite science fiction movie. Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was able to rent this when I was in high school, and it just blew my mind. Just a great movie. It really is. It's beautifully shot, and it tells a very interesting. Well, not very interesting. It tells a fascinating story, I think, about an alien culture sort of getting involved in the evolution of man, or at least tracking man's evolution, if not influencing it directly. And there's a scene at the beginning where you can certainly argue that they had a direct influence on man's evolution. But it's a classic. I know it's on my list of my 50 favorite films of all time. The 300 Spartans, I have not seen. And any of these movies that I have not seen, if you want to, kindly leave me a comment. If anyone watching this has seen these films that I'm going to mention, let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are on them. 36 Hours. This is a really good thriller set, in World War II. Really cool concept. James Garner plays an American who is captured by the Nazis. Well, I don't want to go too deep into it. I don't want to get into spoilers. So let's just it's worth seeing. It's a great movie. 4 for Texas, part of the Frank Sinatra collection. I am a big fan of Frank Sinatra as an actor, but I have not seen this one yet. 8½, my all-time favorite Fellini film. It's it's a very personal movie. It's about a filmmaker who gets the funding. Everyone's getting ready for him to make his next movie. He's got the money, the cast, everything, and then he suddenly realizes he's lost his muse. He doesn't want to really be involved with it anymore. And it deals with his personal relationships with his wife and his mistress, and it really is just a great movie. Again, Fellini's best. I'm pretty sure this is one of my 50 favorite films of all time too. Ace High. This is a spaghetti western. It says Eli Wallach there, but I know that this one. It's been a while since I've seen this, I'll be honest with you. But I know that Eli Wallach, I don't know that he's the main star of this one. Anyway. Advising Consent, Otto Preminger. This is an incredible film. It's a political drama, but it almost plays like a political thriller. With what happens. I mean, it's got such a cast. I mean, look at that cast. Henry Fonda, Charles Lawton, Don Murray, Walter Pidgeon, Peter Lawford, Gene Tierney, Franchot Tone, Lou Ayres, and there's more listed there. It's about the president's appointment to a specific post, and the Senate sort of debating whether or not to approve it. The president is very ill. Lou Ayres, I know, plays the vice president. Henry Fonda plays the nominee, and he's not in most of the movie, but he has some great scenes right at the beginning there. I've only seen this movie, well, twice, I'm going to say. But it's one of those ones I don't want to return to too often because when I watch it, it just seems fresh. And there's so much to admire, especially Charles Lawton, who plays a Southern senator, and it's such a great performance. I mean, I think it's one of his great performances. Yeah, Advising Consent, great movie. Africa, Blood and Guts. This is a Mondo film, one of those Mondo documentaries from the 60s. Pretty disturbing, some pretty terrible things happen in this movie. Pretty shocking. So it kind of fits in with that whole Mondo Cane, shocking Asia, I guess, style of film. I did review it on the blog, dvdinfatuation.com, if you want to check out my review of it. I don't know that I strongly recommend this one. You gotta know what you're getting into with it. The Agony and the Ecstasy, with, who's it? It is, oh God, who are the actors? Well, Charlton Heston, obviously, playing Michelangelo, and Rex Harrison as the Pope. I know that Heston and Rex Harrison did not get along while making this movie. Not many people got along with Rex Harrison, from what I understand. He was not a very warm individual. But him and Heston especially clashed during the making of this film. And it did help their performances in it because they do play. You know, it was the Pope is the painting of the Sistine Chapel, and Michelangelo, agreeing to do it and taking more time than the Pope likes, and just sort of a battle of wills between the two of them. So the fact that Heston and Rex Harrison did not care for each other kind of adds a little bit to to the tension between the characters as well. The Alamo. I know I've seen parts of this, but I've never seen the whole movie. Alice's Restaurant, a cool 1969 film about, sort of with Arlo Guthrie's, 18-minute song, 20-minute song, Alice's Restaurant, serving as the basis for it. I think Arthur Penn directed this. And it really is a good movie. It might not have aged very well. It definitely has that sort of hippie dropout mentality to it. But a really cool film. It's on my top 10 for that year. I know that. And it's one I like to return to every now and again. Elia Kazan's America, America. I have not seen that one. I have seen Anzio. I don't think it's a great war movie. I think it's okay. I know Peter Falk is in this, and one of the interesting things I read was that Peter Falk didn't like any of the dialogue written for him. So he agreed to be in the movie as long as he could rewrite his own dialogue, and they allowed it. So he wrote all of his own lines in this film. It's an Italian-made World War II film, and it's not bad. It's just not. It's not one of the top-tier ones either. Barabbas, biblical film about the guy who was, I guess the crowd said to release Barabbas instead of Jesus. And I don't know much about this movie either. I haven't seen it. Barbarella, Queen of the Galaxy. Wow, this is just a great science fiction movie. Everyone remembers the opening scene of Jane Fonda's her striptease in Zero Gravity, but there's a lot more to this movie than that, and it's campy, but it's a fun sort of camp, and I'm a big fan of Barbarella. Beckett. This is one of two movies where Peter O'Toole played King Henry II. The first Plantagenet king, in Britain, and he is just so good in that part. He will play it. He played it later again in the later '60s with this is early '60s Beckett, and you have Richard Burton as Thomas of Beckett, and it's about these two great friends who end up on opposite sides, and something terrible happens. It's all in history, obviously. I'm not trying to avoid spoiling the movie. Anyone who has any sort of knowledge of that portion of history will know how this movie is going to turn out. But it's so well done, and Peter O'Toole just chews the scenery with his depiction of Henry II, which he would do again in The Lion in Winter. They would make a great double feature. Birdman of Alcatraz, I have seen this once. My real interest in it was that I've actually visited Alcatraz Island, and I remember the tour guide showing us the area where the Birdman, I guess, kept his birds. But I did like the film. I mean, it's been a good 15, 16 years since I've seen it, but I do remember enjoying it. And then we've got, this is interesting because we've got two Mario Bava's classic horror films here, Black Sabbath and Black Sunday. It makes sense alphabetically that they would follow one another. This is an anthology. It has Boris Karloff in it, and it's strong, but I think Black Sunday may be Bava's horror masterpiece. Barbara Steele in that, playing dual roles. And at the very beginning, she's a character who is condemned to death for witchcraft, and that character makes a reappearance later in the film. Just beautiful, gothic. So much about this movie is great. I know, who was it I read? I think it might have been Tim Burton that this is his favorite horror film. Was it Tim Burton? I think it might have been, and he watches it like once a year or something around Halloween. I might be wrong about that, but I'm not sure who it was, but I think it was Tim Burton. The Blue Max, another World War II film about a German pilot. No, this is not World War II, I think. This is World War I. I'm sorry, this is a World War I film about a German pilot. Good movie. Again, I don't think, George Papard plays the lead, and I think it's based on a true story as well. And it's a good movie. It is. Boccaccio 70. I have not seen it. And it's a anthology, I guess, and it's directed, look who directed them. Vittorio De Sica, Federico Fellini, Mario Monicelli, and Lucio Visconti. Or Luchino Visconti. That alone should make me want to pop this in right now. But I have not seen that yet. Les Bonnes Femmes, Claude Chabrol. I did see this. It's been a while. I do remember liking it, though. Bonnie and Clyde. It's interesting. I kept the DVD for this, and I put it in here, but I also have a Digibook Blu-ray of Bonnie and Clyde, and that's the one I watch more regularly. I guess I just sort of put it in this book to say, hey, it's a classic movie. It deserves to be mentioned alongside the great films of the 60s, and it did. It sort of was a strong look at another Arthur Penn film, obviously. Very strong, violent motion picture. Sort of changed movie. It was one of the films that ushered in new Hollywood, I would say, with the younger filmmakers sort of taking over. And this was in the late 60s. That really came to fruition in the 70s. But this was one of those first movies to do that, to sort of let everyone know, hey, there's a new vision in Hollywood. It's not just going to be these dusty old musicals or period dramas. There are filmmakers who have something more to say than that. Boston Strangler, based on a true story. It's got Tony Curtis in it. I have seen it, but it has been a while. Breakfast at Tiffany's. I don't think you can watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I've said this on my review on the blog, without getting a crush on Audrey Hepburn. She is so good in this movie. I know initially they were talking about Marilyn Monroe playing Holly Golightly, but I can't imagine anyone else other than Audrey Hepburn in the role, and I thought she was great in it. It's a must-see. It's a little bit... Mickey Rooney has an unfortunate role in it as Holly's Asian upstairs neighbor. Certainly not the most racially sensitive performance of Mickey Rooney's career. But again, the 60s, a different time. And that should not prevent you from seeing the film, because it is good. Breathless, Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, a classic, one of the great French New Wave films, along with Truffaut's The 400 Blows. Although I think of the two, I would say Godard was a little more. Truffaut's films are a little more accessible to cinema fans. Jean-Luc Godard was really redefining cinema and just trying all of this, fascinating new stuff. And you see it in Breathless. Characters talk to the camera. There's, the way it's cut together, the way that the story's told. It really was like Godard saying, hey, this is what cinema can be. And so I think in the end, as much as I find myself at times preferring the films of Francois Truffaut, I think Godard was maybe closer to the spirit of the French New Wave, ultimately, when you kind of look at the full filmography. And that's not taking anything away from Truffaut. Like I said, I love his films. But what Godard was doing, he wasn't always successful. Some of his movies, I just was like, okay, I didn't really care for that one. But Breathless is arguably his best movie. His first, and arguably his best. The Bride Wore Black. I don't believe I've seen this one. Spaghetti Western, A Bullet for the General. I don't think I've seen this one either. Klaus Kinski. Wait, did I? No, I don't think I've seen this one yet either. And that's a shame because I've heard so much about it and I really do want to check it out. Bullet with Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen, I don't know if I guess this could be considered sort of his iconic role. And it's set in San Francisco, based on an actual, detective working at the time. And it's a great performance. It really is. I mean, Steve McQueen was a great actor. He was very insecure. I don't know if it was insecurities or just the way he sort of approached his career, but, he didn't always get along with his co-stars. He made a lot of demands. He almost walked off of The Great Escape when he thought James Garner was getting better scenes than he had. There's that story of the Towering Inferno where him and Paul Newman, Steve McQueen only signed on if they had the exact same number of lines, and because Paul Newman had so many scenes at the beginning, he sort of disappears for a while so that Steve McQueen can catch up once the fire breaks out. There were stories between him and Dustin Hoffman on Papillon. He did not get along with Yul Brynner on The Magnificent Seven. But yet, Steve McQueen as an actor, you just can't take anything away from him, I don't think. And Bullet was a great performance. I think Papillon might be his finest performance, but Bullet, he was great in that. Marlon Brando in Burn. As much as I am a Marlon Brando fan, he is my favorite actor. I have not seen Burn. And here's another one that I have a Blu-ray Digibook of, and as well as this DVD, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Just a fun Western film. So many great scenes in this one. I love the, when they're robbing the train and, you think you used too much dynamite there, Butch? Or do you think you used enough dynamite there, Butch? And of course at the end when they go south of the border, some great scenes in that as well. Just a really fun late 60s sort of Western. And of course it introduced Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, that song, in a pretty lighthearted sequence. Have not seen Cactus Flower. It's got Walter Matthau, Ingrid Bergman, and Goldie Hawn. It's a pretty good cast. The Musical Camelot. Again, I don't know that I've not seen Camelot. I was going to say I don't think I've seen it the whole thing through, but I don't think I've seen it at all. As much as I like the story of King Arthur too, and that's one I should really check out. Carnival of Souls. Herc Harvey's just classic independent black and white horror. Shot in Utah, I believe, and very low budget, but very creepy. And it's about a woman who's involved in a car accident and eventually makes her way out west to start her life anew, but realizes that some very strange things were going on and that she can't explain, and might tie back to the crash she was in. Well worth seeing if you haven't, especially for horror fans. And this is another one for horror fans, Castle of Blood. It's a black and white Italian horror film. Edgar Allan Poe plays a character in this. Barbara Steele is in this. And very gothic. It's just one I think that, you should see. It's also known as Danse Macabre. Cat Ballou, Lee Marvin, won an Oscar for this film, playing two characters. It's a musical Western comedy. And been a few years since I've seen it, but I do remember enjoying it. Cemetery Without Crosses. I picked this. I got this as, Arrow had a Kickstarter campaign when they were launching the U.S. Portion of their label. And I did contribute to it, and I got 3 Blu-rays as a result. And I think Cemetery Without Crosses was one of them. No, you know what? No, it wasn't. I think Day of Anger was one of them. Never mind. Not Cemetery Without Crosses. I think it was Day of Anger. I picked this one up later, but I haven't seen it, regardless. Charade. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic. Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn. And as you can see, it's also got James Coburn, Walter Matthau. Just a good movie. Charlie. It's funny. I didn't connect with this film like I thought I would. Cliff Robertson was nominated for his performance, I'm pretty sure, in Charlie. I think he did as well as can be expected, but I just did not connect with this movie like I thought I would, and it didn't make the impact on me that I thought it would. I watched it on vacation one year, and it just, I don't know. I thought it was good. I don't get all of the high praise for it, I guess is what I'm saying. But it's a good film, a good drama. Cleopatra, the infamous movie, the film that, sunk a studio, went how many millions of dollars over budget, to the point that even though it was the #1 movie that year when it was finally released, it ended up losing money. Liz Taylor as Cleopatra, Richard Burton as Mark Antony, Rex Harrison as Julius Caesar. It's an epic film. I really like Cleopatra. It's a good movie. It just has a bad, sort of a bad history with it, a bad backstory. But the movie itself, I thought, was great. And the Shaw Brothers. I'm just a big Shaw Brothers fan. I mean, I think they really came into their own more in the 70s than in the 60s. But they did have a few movies that they released, and Come Drink With Me is one of them. Just the Shaw Brothers in general. When I see the Shaw Brothers are behind a movie, especially in the martial arts, kung fu, I get excited, and I can't wait to see it. Commissar. I have not seen this one yet. Cool Hand Luke I have, one of Paul Newman's great performances about a chain gang. He's arrested at the beginning and put on this chain gang. George Kennedy won Best Supporting Actor for this. Really strong drama and worth seeing. It's got, of course, that very memorable line. Strother Martin as the boss of the chain gang. What we have here is failure to communicate, which by itself doesn't sound like much, but when you see it in the context of the scene itself, it's pretty poignant. Day of Anger. Here it is. I just was talking about this one. This is the one that I got free as contributing to the Kickstarter for Arrow's U.S., I guess, Arrow releasing some of their titles in the U.S. They had been a UK label exclusively up to that point. But I haven't seen it yet. Day of the Triffids, sort of a low-budget horror film. Yeah, I don't remember much about it, so I'm just sort of killing time here. But I have seen that one. I have not seen The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Not much to say about it. Let's see. The Baltimore City paper calls it a vastly subversive nuclear apocalypse film. Crank the AC and enjoy. Interesting. I have seen Days of Wine and Roses. Awesome performance by Jack Lemmon as an alcoholic. I think this is well worth seeing. Decide. Did I see Decide? I think I might have. I don't remember a lot about it. It's been a while. Dead Ringer, despite Bette Davis being my favorite actress, and this is one of her later films, obviously, because it's a horror film, I have not seen Dead Ringer yet. I did see The Deadly Bees. I saw that when it was a TV movie back in the 70s, and it scared the hell out of me. I mean, there were moments in this movie that just stayed with me and still stay with me. There's one set in a car that goes into the, I want to say, the Astrodome. There's this biker and his girlfriend who pull up and get attacked by these bees. It's Ben Johnson stars in it. Not one of his great performances by any stretch of the imagination, but the movie itself is effective. Die Monster Die with Boris Karloff. I'm going to start moving a little quicker. I'm looking at the time here. Dirty Dozen. I love that movie. I can watch it anytime. A great sort of guys on a mission film. The training scenes are awesome, but it's the action that towards the end that I think really made the film. And John Cassavetes is awesome in this as one of the Dirty Dozen. Charles Bronson is in the film. A young Donald Sutherland is one of the Dirty Dozen. But Telly Savalas is going to be the one you're going to remember the most from this one. And the original Django, just a classic. It starts off with him pulling a coffin in the mud and that theme song kicking in. Tarantino would later use that same theme song for Django Unchained. So memorable. Sergio Corbucci, one of the great all-time Italian westerns. And then Django Kill, If You Live, Shoot. So many movies were named because of the success of Django. A lot of movies put Django in the title, just like with, when Sergio Leone's trilogy came out, A Fistful of Dollars and all, you'd get a fistful of, they would reuse the title a lot. And there were over like 20 or something movies named Django. There was only one actual sequel to Django. And I don't know if that's in this book or not. Arrow did release that film, and I know I've seen it, and I liked it. They had another actor other than Franco Nero playing Django in it. Was it Terence Hill? I think it was Terence Hill, and who was, of course, so great in, oh God, what were those movies? My mind is going. I can't remember. The comedy. He sort of ushered in, Terence Hill and Bud Spencer ushered in the comedy spaghetti western. Trinity. They call me Trinity, the Trinity films. Yes, okay, thank God it came to me. He played Django in the follow-up to the original, the only actual sequel to Django. This is not a sequel to the original Django. It just took advantage of its popularity by, for at least one release, at least maybe in the U.S., putting Django in the title. Good documentary about Bob Dylan, Don't Look Back. It's at a sort of a pivotal time in his career where he was changing his sound and a lot of his fans were rebelling against that. So it's interesting in that way and well worth checking out. Yeah, this is a good one. Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. I believe I watched this for a podcast. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, and I think I reviewed it. It was one of our, was this the movie that was one of our audience, where we turned the movie over to the audience on Horror Movie Podcast? I think this might have been one recommended for me, and I did watch it. Elmer Gantry. Yeah, Burt Lancaster, Gene Simmons. Have not seen that one yet. It's a classic, though. I know it's a classic, but I have not seen it. The End of August at the Hotel Ozone. I read about this movie. I was so anxious to watch it, and then I got it, and I just never watched it. I have to correct that. It's a little embarrassing saying I got all these movies that I've never seen, but this is one of them. Here's another. I've not seen Eva. It's Joseph Losey's erotic tale of dark desire. I've not seen Eva. I have seen Fahrenheit 451, Francois Truffaut's movie. He did not make Bonnie and Clyde because he was in the process of putting together Fahrenheit 451, based on the Ray Bradbury novel, and it's a good film, as is Failsafe. Failsafe is a great movie. It's another one that's dealing with nuclear war. There's a mistake, something happens, and it's Henry Fonda's the president, Walter Matthau, another great dramatic performance by Walter Matthau. And I just remember the very end of this scene just being about as poignant can be. Failsafe, great film. Family Jewels. Jerry Lewis is one of those guys. He's an acquired taste. And I gotta be honest, I haven't really acquired a taste for a lot of Jerry Lewis's movies. But this one I love. I love The Family Jewels. He is so good in it. There are some hilarious moments in this. He plays a group of, like a lot of characters. A young girl is orphaned and she has a lot of money left to her, and they're trying to decide which of her uncles will be her guardian, and Jerry Lewis plays them all, and one's a pilot, one's a scientist, one's a gangster. Over the top, of course, as Jerry Lewis goes. A lot of Jerry Lewis's comedy was, but for some reason, it just works in this movie for me. It really does. And Fantastic Voyage. This is one I used to watch all the time on TV whenever it came on. It's so cool that, the president of the United States is dying, he suffers. Something has happened, and they use a new technology where they shrink these doctors down in a submarine and inject it into the president's bloodstream, and they're going through his body to try to save him, or maybe he has. I don't know. I don't remember exactly why they have to. It's definitely to save the president of the United States, and I know that that one of the crew ends up being an enemy agent in there who's actually in there to sabotage and just a really cool science. The way that they depicted the journey inside the human body, it's really just really cool. Far from the Madding Crowd. I think is there a recent remake of this, or is being remade now? I can't remember, but I've not seen the original. Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. This is an imported DVD. Again, I haven't seen it often, but I really like it. It's Russ Meyer. I had a poster. If you look at my my most recent poster, my number 2, my second where I'm unveiling these posters, I found that I have one for Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. It's an earlier video if you want to check it out. The Female Vampire Killers. This is Roman Polanski. I love the opening shot of this movie. It just pulled me in and kept me, and I ended up really enjoying the movie. It's a fun horror comedy, and I think Polanski even plays a minor role in it, as does his wife Sharon Tate at the time. Satyricon. It's interesting. I have an interesting history with this film. This is the first Fellini movie I ever saw, and it was when I was in high school. I had rented it from that video store that I've talked about that had all those great titles, that a lot of the other video stores didn't have. Obviously, most of the mainline ones are going to be, like even pre-Blockbuster, but the ones who, like, most video stores, they centered on the newer releases. That's what people wanted to see. But there was one video store that had all of these obscure titles from around the world and U.S. films as well that you just couldn't find in the normal video store. I got Satyricon. It went right over my head at that time. I didn't know what to make of this movie. I have seen it recently. I liked it a lot more, and I could identify more what Fellini was trying to do. This is his later... what he had the neorealist portion of his career early on, Ivan Leone and films like that. These are much more, I guess, artistic. I want to say abstract, but I don't know if that's the right term. You don't always grasp what he's doing in these movies, but I did like Satyricon much more the second time around. 5 Minutes to Live. This is a cool, low budget crime thriller. Johnny Cash plays a desperate robber who holds up in this house and holds the family hostage. It's got Vic Tayback in it. Ron Howard plays the young boy. He's a kid when this one was made. Johnny Cash, I can't say he's the strongest actor, but it's kind of cool to see him in a role like this. The Fortune Cookie, a Billy Wilder comedy, very underrated. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau are so funny in this. Jack Lemmon plays a cameraman for CBS Sports who ends up injured on the sideline during a game. A player runs into him, and Walter Matthau plays his brother-in-law, a shyster of a lawyer who is trying to get Jack Lemmon to sue, even though he's not that injured. The injuries are not that severe. Walter Matthau calls in some doctors who are going to say that he may never work again, and Jack Lemmon isn't really interested in doing that. He doesn't trust Walter Matthau. He really just wants to reconnect with his ex-wife. So Walter Matthau thinks, okay, if I can get his ex-wife back in the picture, maybe I can convince her to convince him to sue. And it's just a really funny movie, and I think Walter Matthau walks off with it. It's but it's so funny. The Fugitive Kind, another Marlon Brando movie I have not seen yet. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of embarrassing. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum. This is a musical comedy. Zero Mostel, Phil Silvers, Jack Gilford, Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton's last film, he was actually dying when he made this one. Set in the Roman times. It's a musical. I think the best musical sequence is Comedy Tonight, Zero Mostel singing that one. But it's a fun comedy. It really is, based on a stage play. It's fun. Genghis Khan, an epic. I have not seen that one yet. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, one of the all-time great spaghetti westerns. Sergio Leone, the last one of the trilogy with Clint Eastwood, the Man with No Name trilogy, although he does have a name, I think, in all of the movies. Maybe not the second one, I can't remember, but I think, or the first one, I think he does have a name. I know they call him Blondie in this one, so he does have a name in this one. Just amazing. I always said that I prefer Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. That will always be my favorite. But The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of my top 50 films of all time as well, and just one of the great westerns. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Have not seen that yet. The Graduate. Wow, this came out, I'm pretty sure, the same year as Bonnie and Clyde. And, wow, just another great movie. Dustin Hoffman cast as Ben Braddock. It was based on a book, I believe. And he was not what the author had in mind for Ben Braddock, but he does such a great job in this one, and it's the music of Simon and Garfunkel that I think is most memorable. Mrs. Robinson, and it's about a college student who begins an affair with one of his parents' friend after graduating and not realizing what he wants to do with his life. Ends up having an affair with one of his parents' friends, played by Anne Bancroft, and but then falls in love with Anne Bancroft's daughter, played by Catherine Ross. And just a great movie, an awesome final sequence where Mrs. Robinson plays of him trying to stop a wedding. Ben's trying to stop a wedding, and it's just a great movie. I think one of the all-time classic 60s films, if I'm being honest. I feel justified in ranking it as such. Grand Slam. Don't know much about this one. Haven't seen it. The Great Silence, another great spaghetti western. This one has some awesome scenes set in the snow right at the beginning. And it's got Klaus Kinski, Jean-Louis Trintignant. Forget it. Anyway, you say it. And against another Sergio Corbucci. He just had a touch with these westerns, and this is great. I mean, this is one you have to put on your list if you like westerns in general, but especially spaghetti westerns. But I think most people who like them have actually seen that one anyway. But in case you haven't, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Another 60s film. This one's got Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Sidney Poitier. A girl brings home her fiance, who happens to be African American, and it's how her parents and his parents react to that. A very strong drama for the time period. Guns of Navarone, classic war film. I saw Force 10 from Navarone first, the one with Harrison Ford. I saw that on cable before I saw Guns of Navarone, but Guns of Navarone is probably the better of the two, and I'm a fan of it. The Hallelujah Trail. I remember my father raving about this one. It's so funny. It's an over 3-hour comedy western with Burt Lancaster, and it has to do with, I think they're trying to, like an early an early prohibition where they're trying to get rid of booze. It's been a long time. I recorded it off of TV many years ago, and I watched it, and I liked it, but I haven't seen it since. It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with some women and bringing the cavalry into trying to sort of sober up the West. Clint Eastwood's Hang 'em High. Eastwood just made so many great Western films, and I think this is one of them. John Wayne Hattori, I have not seen this. The Haunting I have seen. I love The Haunting. It's so creepy. It's a black and white horror film in a haunted house, and in a truly haunted house. There's a moment with a door that's breathing in this one that you are on the edge of your seat throughout this movie. I think it's so tense and so well made. Hell in the Pacific, Lee Marvin, Toshiro Mifune. That cast alone makes it something should make you want to see it. Hasn't made me want to see it yet. Haven't seen this movie, but yeah, I need to. And I haven't seen Hell is for Heroes with Steve McQueen either. Hombre. Okay. Hombre is a movie. Back in 2003, I was in a car crash, and I ended up spending 3 days in intensive care and another 3 days after that just in the hospital. While in intensive care, there was a TV in front of me, and I had it tuned to, I want to say TCM, and Hombre was one of them. No, it wasn't TCM. What channel was it? It wasn't Turner. It was another movie. Maybe it was AMC. I can't remember, but Hombre was one of the movies they had on regular rotation. I saw it at least twice during that stay. I know that they also had Mary Riley playing at that time, and God, there was a third movie, and I don't remember what it is now. But anyway, I remember seeing Hombre, and Paul Newman, I think, plays a Native American in that one, and I really enjoyed it. House of $1,000. It is a Vincent Price horror film that I have not seen yet. House of the Damned I have. This is a low-budget horror film. They make it out that this is a haunted house, but I don't believe it is. And it turns out to have something to do with a carnival sideshow. I know Richard Kiel plays a role in this. Jaws from the Bond films. He plays a part in this movie. I reviewed it. I think this is maybe the first 50 or 60 movies I reviewed on DVD Infatuation, which means I haven't seen it in 10 years. How the West Was Won, a Cinerama. My mother has a collectible booklet. She saw the Roadshow edition of How the West Was Won, and it is a great Western. I don't know that I would say it's one of the greatest Westerns of the 60s, even if you put aside the spaghetti Westerns, which are in a class by themselves. I still don't know that I would put How the West Was Won above some of the 50s films. The John Ford participated in the making of this. He wasn't the primary director, but I think he did a sequence in this film. But you look at some of the 50s movies like The Searchers and, obviously Rio Bravo. Those, I put them above How the West Was Won. But it's still a good movie with an all-star cast. How to Stuff a Wild Bikini. I think this goes back to the beach blanket bingo sort of movies with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello. I have not seen it. I have seen HUD. Great performance by Paul Newman. Not exactly playing the most likable character, but a good movie. Judy Garland, I could go on singing this. I really want to see this film after watching Judy, because it's a later film in Judy Garland's career, obviously, and it looks like it would be very biographical. I haven't watched it. I do want to see it. Joan Crawford, a later film, I Saw What You Did. I have not seen that yet either. The Illustrated Man. Rod Steiger plays a guy with a bunch of tattoos, and I believe it's a anthology. Does it stretch out to an anthology? Maybe not. I don't remember much about it. In Cold Blood, classic film based on Truman Capote's book about a real-life murder case. It's the same one that was covered in the 2000 film Capote, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman, who won an Oscar for portraying the author in that one. But this movie is so well made. I mean, there's that great scene at the end where Robert Blake is looking out of a window and it's raining and it just looks like tears running down his face. It really shows you what image, like the strength that certain images and just the way that they're shot can, how it can really add so much to a film. In the Heat of the Night, Sidney Poitier, a brilliant performance, as well as Rod Steiger, about a black detective from the North who goes to investigate, to help out with a murder in the South, and of course, just with racism being what it was, leads to a lot of tension between him and Rod Steiger as well. It became a very good TV series, actually, I think with, who was it, Henry Rollins and Carol O'Connor taking on the roles. And I really like the TV series as well. But the movie is one, it's a classic. I'm sure it was nominated for Best Picture, and it's one you definitely have to see. Inherit the Wind. Wow. Based on this, the Scopes monkey trials about teaching evolution in schools. Two old political compatriots. This is based on an actual trial, based on real people. Spencer Tracy giving one of his great performances. Frederick March. Gene Kelly plays a very un-Gene Kelly-like role in this as a sarcastic reporter. One of the great courtroom dramas. I mean, do yourself a favor and see Inherit the Wind as soon as you can if you have not seen this one yet. Claude Akins plays a preacher whose daughter is actually dating the man on trial. It's just a great movie. The Innocents, another great sort of haunted house horror film, black and white. Some people would put this above The Haunting. I don't know. I'd really have to see them both back to back to decide. Deborah Kerr is one of my favorite actresses, and she's great in this one. I love The Haunting so much, but The Innocents is so good. Is Paris Burning? I watched this one maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. It's a long film, and I woke up in the middle of the night at one point. I said, all right, I'm not getting back to sleep. I might as well pop in a movie, and I watched Is Paris Burning, and because of that, I don't remember a lot about it, and it's one I'm going to have to revisit. The original Italian Job. This was remade in the 2000s, obviously, and was a popular film, and rightly so. It was very good. I like the original Italian Job. It's got Michael Caine. Also has Benny Hill. I'm almost positive Benny Hill plays a small role in this, in the original Italian Job. And it's about a different sort of caper, but it is about this group of guys trying to pull off a major heist. Jason and the Argonauts. For me, this is the best of the Ray Harryhausen effects films. No, I shouldn't say that. I think Clash of the Titans will always be my favorite. But Jason and the Argonauts is a close second as far as favorite, but I'm still going to say it's probably his best. Based on, Greek mythology, some of the effects he came up with for this one. I'm pretty sure this is the one that has the skeleton fight that took him months to do, Harryhausen months to do. And it's just great. An awesome fantasy film. Judgment at Nuremberg, based on the Nuremberg trials, the Nazis accused of war crimes. All-star cast in this one. I know that it has William Shatner in a supporting role as well. But I mean, look at that cast. And another great courtroom drama that Spencer Tracy is in. I think this in Inherit the Wind. If you have a whole afternoon to kill, because they're not short movies. I think Inherit the Wind might be just around 2 hours, but Judgment at Nuremberg, I'm pretty sure is around 3. Yeah, definitely worth doing, though, if you can watch those two in one afternoon. Jules and Jim, Francois Truffaut. Classic, 2 guys, 1 girl. They both love her. And she sort of has on and off relationships with both of them. Really is a different sort of love story. Fits in with the French New Wave. But again, like I said, I think Truffaut's movies were a little more accessible to cinema fans in general, whereas Godard was just, like he said, he was reinventing cinema. Juliet of the Spirits, another later Fellini film. I've only seen it once, but I remember really enjoying it. I have not seen Kaleidoscope with Warren Beatty and Susanna York. Kess. Wow. Strong film by Ken Loach, based on a novel, as it says here. This kid having trouble in school, trouble at home, gets this hawk and trains it, and it's just about the connection between the two. It does not have an upbeat ending. I'm just going to throw that out there. You are not going to walk away from this movie smiling. I'm assuming it's loyal to the book, but if you're looking for a feel-good movie, you're not going to find it here. But if you want to see a great British film from the late 60s, watch Kess. It is awesome. King Kong Escapes. I think just looking at that tells you all you need to know about King Kong Escapes. It's a kaiju film from Japan. I think I watched this. Did I watch this for a kaiju episode? Godzilla, where we looked at the guy. I don't think I did. I don't think I got around to that one. Lady in Cement. This is a sequel to Tony Rome with Frank Sinatra. I prefer Lady in Cement. I like Lady in Cement over Tony Rome. But you know, that's just me. Frank Sinatra plays a detective down in Florida. He ends up he's out diving. He's on his boat. He's out diving, and he finds a woman with the old cement shoes at the bottom. A naked woman who had been killed, put in cement and thrown into the water, and it's him trying to solve the case. You can watch Tony Rome first. Tony Rome is a good movie. I don't think either one features Sinatra at his best. It's almost as if he was on vacation and just agreed to play the role. I don't think he puts a lot of gusto into his performance in either movie. But the movies themselves are still worth seeing. The Last Voyage. This is a very early sort of disaster film about a ship that's breaking apart out at sea, and the crew. This follows a couple different stories. You got Robert Stack and Dorothy Malone play a couple, and she ends up being trapped, and he's trying to rescue her. But there's other stuff going on as well, and it's just an early disaster film, and if it's one that I don't think gets a lot of press, and it's one that I really enjoyed. Lawrence of Arabia. What can you say? A 4-hour movie, no women in it that have a speaking part, but it is a iconic role for Peter O'Toole. It's shot in the desert. David Lean. It's a masterpiece, and it's one of my top 50 films of all time. The Learning Tree from 1969. This is a movie that deals with prejudice and bigotry in the South in a very strong way. I definitely recommend the Learning Tree if you haven't seen it. I remember I had seen this on TV or on cable probably 20 years ago, and I never knew what movie it was. I said, God, I wish I could find that one again. It was so good. I found it. Again, just maybe about 3 years ago on DVD, and I watched it again, and it was just as powerful as I remember it being. Sidney Poitier, Lilies in the Field. I have not seen that one yet. The Lion in Winter. Oh, this is the second time with Peter O'Toole playing Henry II. I like this one maybe a little bit better than Beckett because it has Katharine Hepburn as Eleanor of Aquitaine, and Henry, his wife, who he married. She was a lot older than he was, and this is real life stuff now. Eleanor of Aquitaine was a lot older than Henry II, but he married her to obtain some lands in France. I mean, England owned most of France at this time as well, or controlled most of France at this time as well. And she kind of set her sons up against their father. And this has, as I said, Katharine Hepburn. I know Anthony Hopkins plays Richard the Lionheart. Timothy Dalton plays the King of France. And it just has a lot of, it's his three sons. It's set in Christmas, and he releases Eleanor of Aquitaine from prison to come to Christmas court for a couple days before sending her back to prison. And she's trying to get the sons again to rise up against the father. And it's based on a stage play. Just a great, great movie. It was remade later on with Patrick Stewart and Glenn Close in the leads. But this is the version I watch this at least once a year. Little Girls. Okay, that's an exploitation film, obviously. I have not seen it yet. Stanley Kubrick's Lolita. Yeah, another great Kubrick film. It really is. I know it wasn't as loyal to the book, but that was never Kubrick's strong points anyway. James Mason gives a great performance in this one. I know Shelley Winters is in it. As a Kubrick, if you're a fan of Kubrick, it's not going to be like his later movies, obviously, but it's a good one. Longest Day, World War II, the invasion, the D-Day invasion, and tells a whole bunch of different stories. I know John Wayne is in this one, a lot of all-star cast. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's a good movie. I don't know that I've seen Lord Jim. There's a lot of Peter O'Toole movies I need to watch. He is one of my favorite actors. I love Peter O'Toole, and I have so many of his movies I haven't seen yet that I'm finding here, and I got to check them out. Lord of the Flies I have seen. It's been some years, but again, the story of the kids who end up stranded on an island and form their own sort of, let's just say, it doesn't, when kids are in charge, I guess, without parental guidance, I think was the maybe the point of this, that things can get out of control, and they definitely do get out of control in Lord of the Flies. Magnificent Seven, one of the great westerns inspired by, or a remake of The Seven Samurai. This is another one with Steve McQueen. As I mentioned, him and Yul Brynner did not get along during the making of this movie. There's a scene in particular where they're in a carriage together and they're riding up a hill to bring a body to the grave for burial, and the town is some people in the town don't want it buried in the cemetery. And Yul Brynner is sitting there. He grabs the reins for the horses, and Steve McQueen's loading a shotgun, and he shakes the shells. Well, when they saw that in the Daily, Yul Brynner didn't realize he did that, and Yul Brynner went ballistic because it was Steve McQueen trying to draw attention to himself, is what Yul Brynner saw it as. And it probably was Steve McQueen trying to draw attention to himself in that scene. But Yul Brynner saw that in the dailies and supposedly went crazy. But I love the Magnificent Seven, and the theme for the Magnificent Seven is one of the all-time great theme songs, I think. Major Dundee, this is a Sam Peckinpah movie. He made this one, and Charlton Heston wanted to be in it. They fired Peckinpah from this. Charlton Heston famously said, "Just take my salary and pay him. Use that to make up for the overages. You don't have to pay me for the movie." Heston did that thinking, well, they won't take me up on that. But sure enough, a paper came later for Heston to sign. He did not make any money for his performance in this movie, but he gladly did it. And he wasn't even getting along with Peckinpah, because he was so mad at Peckinpah at one point he tried to run him over with a horse. So it's kind of a funny moment. You can look that one up online and read more about it. But it was Peckinpah being Peckinpah. James Coburn didn't like working with Peckinpah on this one, but obviously I guess they made their peace, because Coburn appeared in a few more Peckinpah films over the years. Man for All Seasons, based on the stage play. This is about who is it? Henry VIII and Sir Thomas More, and Sir Thomas More's sort of not supporting Henry when he wants to divorce Catherine and break away from the Catholic Church. Just a really strong movie. I know it was up. Does this win Best Picture? I know it won a major Oscar back when it was released. I can't remember which Oscar, if it was Best Picture or for Best Actor. I can't remember, but it's a classic. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. As much as I like the three sort of John Wayne, John Ford, the main three westerns, which is Stagecoach, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and The Searchers, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance deserves a place as well. It's black and white. Lee Marvin plays the title character. Boy, do you dislike this guy. He's one of the more detestable characters, I think, in cinematic history, is his Liberty Valance. And Lee Marvin is so good in it. There's no mystery what happens to Liberty Valance. You see it right there. The real mystery lies in what actually happened during that night when Liberty Valance was shot. A great performance by John Wayne, James Stewart. Great movie. Manchurian Candidate, one of my 50 favorite films. Sinatra does give a great performance in this one. Janet Leigh gives a very strange performance in this movie. I don't fully understand what's going on with her character, but I know it has something to do with the whole sort of brainwashing. This is about Lawrence Harvey, who was brainwashed to be used later for a political assassination by communists in Manchuria during the war. And strong opening scene. Boy, does it get you. There's this opening scene of them being brainwashed and what's actually going on, and what him and his fellow troops, including Frank Sinatra, are actually seeing, as opposed to what's actually going on. Oh boy, the Manchurian Candidate, it's a masterpiece. It really, really is. And it took me years to finally get this one and see it, and it did not disappoint. I had been wanting to see this one so long, and I was so happy I got a chance to. Marat Sade. Oh, I wonder if this is the. I think this is the movie I saw, not the Sade. I think Marat Sade is the one I saw. I don't remember a lot about it, and I'm not sure which of the two I saw. I think it might be this one, actually, not the Sade. Medium Cool. Wow, Robert Forster, directed by Haskell Wexler, has something to say about the time period. Haskell Wexler was shooting during the Chicago 1968 riots, the Democratic National Convention. He was out there shooting scenes for this film, and boy, it has a lot to say about the press and their either responsibility to, what's their responsibility? Is it just to report, or is it to get involved? And you see that in the opening scene of this movie. It's really strong stuff. Memories of Underdevelopment. I think this is a Cuban film. I haven't seen it yet. It was one that I meant to see during my recent illness. I picked it up specifically to watch it. It seemed like just a movie I really wanted to check out, and I never did. Merrill's Marauders, a war film. Was this directed by Samuel Fuller? For some reason I think it was, but I might be wrong about that. I think it was, because I think that's why I picked it up, but I haven't seen it yet. Midnight Cowboy. There was a time when Midnight Cowboy was my all-time favorite film. That video store I was talking about that had the obscure titles, I found Midnight Cowboy there. I rented it at least a dozen times. I would just keep going back and re-renting it and re-watching it. No movie, I think, depicted poverty quite like this film did. There's a scene where Joe Buck ends up with, they have nothing. Him and Dustin Hoffman are living, they're living together. They're both homeless, basically. They're living in an abandoned building, and they have no money. And John Voight had come north from Texas to try to be a gigolo, and he thought he could make money as a gigolo in New York, and he's finding it's not as easy as he thought. But boy, there's a scene where Joe Buck, that's John Voight's character, gets some money, and you think, wow, they're on Easy Street now, but it's like such a paltry amount. But the way that poverty is depicted in this movie, it really draws you in, and you're part of that world. And when they get any sort of money or any sort of step up, you're like, wow, now they can finally, now they're on Easy Street, when obviously they're not. It's just so, it's such a great, and it's the only X-rated movie to win Best Picture. It is no longer X-rated. It has been reduced to an R rating. Should have never been X-rated back then, probably, because it's not a pornographic film by any stretch of the imagination. But it is, and it's one of my, and there's another one that's in my top 50. Minnesota Clay. That's a spaghetti western, I think. I have not yet seen. And I think it's a spaghetti western. I know I have not seen it, but I think it's a spaghetti western. This is a Francois Truffaut film, Mississippi Mermaid. I've not seen that. Mr. Budwing, I remember communicating with James Garner's daughter on Twitter. And I was saying how I really liked James Garner in the 36 Hours. She told me that his performance in Mr. Budwing was his all-time favorite. And I haven't seen it yet. And I got it specifically based, from that conversation. And I haven't seen it yet. But I really should. I should check it out, because James Garner is a very underrated actor, in my opinion. He's not as remembered nowadays, but he was so good in so many movies. The Great Escape. He was just so many great performances. Modesty Blaze. I did see this. Monica Vitti plays the title role. It's been a long time, but I have seen this. Music Man is one of my favorites. Musicals. I mentioned in my review on the blog that my family all had their own videotapes and were recording like crazy. My mother had one videotape to her name, and on that videotape were 4 20-minute workouts that she had recorded off of television, and The Music Man, which was playing on cable at the time. And I got to love the movie, just watching it over and over from my mother's videotape. Didn't watch the workouts, I got to be honest, but I did watch The Music Man. The Night of the Iguana. I don't think I've seen this one. I know it's a classic. I don't think I've seen it. Night of the Living Dead. I don't know why I'm keeping this DVD in here. I have it on Criterion Blu-ray, as I mentioned in one of my Unboxing the Special Editions. But yeah, one of the great horror films, George Romero. It is one of the great indie, low-budget horror films. And it still has an impact to this day. I mean, It still has the same sort of love and respect that it did when it was first released. The Odd Couple, such a great Neil Simon film. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. It is hilarious. Hilarious. It became a couple TV shows, actually, that Gary Marshall produced. Wow. You know, one in the 70s and one later, I think, in the 80s, both called The Odd Couple, with different casts, obviously. But so funny. I mean, the great scene with the ladle. Jack Lemmon just goes, "You did not know that that was a ladle." Wow. You will laugh. You will laugh, and you will laugh a lot watching The Odd Couple. Oliver, a musical that won Best, based on the Oliver Twist story, obviously. It won Best Picture, I believe, in the late 60s, and it's a good musical. Yeah. There it is, Once Upon a Time in the West. For me, the single greatest Sergio Leone Western. Wow. I mean, Henry Fonda playing the bad guy, Charles Bronson, Jason Robards. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what more to say than watch it. It is a masterpiece. There are two movies that when I first saw them, they immediately made it onto my greatest films of all time list. Normally, I like to watch movies a few times before that happens. The only two times I remember just saying, yes, this will always be on my list as one of the greatest films of all time, were this and Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express. And Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express, I think, has dropped out of the top 10. I think it's like in the top 15 still. But I think Once Upon a Time in the West is still in my all-time top 10. 1 Million Years BC, another one that Ray Harryhausen had done the effects for, set in, that famous poster, obviously, of Raquel Welch in her very revealing caveman outfit. But Ray Harryhausen, I'm pretty sure, did the effects for this. I think it's a Hammer film, and it's a good one. Another Billy Wilder comedy, like The Fortune Cookie. 1, 2, 3 doesn't get the love it deserves. It's got James Cagney. It's set in Berlin during the Cold War. Obviously, it's about a guy who is a Coke works for Coca-Cola, and he's an executive. He's having an affair with he's cheating on his wife. And Cagney gives such a great performance in this. And then what happens, I think, his daughter, or the daughter of an executive, falls in love with a communist. And it's him trying to first help them, then stop them, and then help them again. I don't remember exactly the course of events, but it's a funny, funny movie. And the One Arms. Here's another Shaw Brothers and a classic, one of their great ones. Definitely see the One Armed Swordsman. Paint Your Wagon lost a ton of money. It's a movie where Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood sing. It's funny because they dubbed Gene Seberg's voice, but they let Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood actually sing. I like this more than I should. There are a couple musical numbers in it, especially like the opening sequence. Lee Marvin singing The First Thing You Know, and of course They Call the Wind Mariah. I think Harvey Presnell singing that's such a very strong musical, strong song, and just the way that they sort of play it in the movie, it works really well. Oh, and Hand Me Down That Can of Beans, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band performs that, and that's a fun scene as well. The Party. This is the one Blake Edwards, Peter Sellers movie that was not a Pink Panther film, and it is hilarious. They get just as many sight gags in with it. Maybe a little insensitive. Not a little insensitive. Peter Sellers plays a Hindu actor, and it's, a lot of stereotypes there, but this is hilarious. It's a very funny movie, and Peter Sellers plays an actor who ruins a movie, spends away over budget. He's blacklisted. He'll never work in this town again, sort of thing. But then the secretary makes a mistake and puts him on the list of guests for a Hollywood party instead of the blacklist. And he ends up with an invite there and runs into some of the people whose movie he screwed up. And it's a lot of fun. The Pawnbroker, Rod Steiger gives a powerful performance in this one. He's a concentration camp survivor in New York in the 60s. And really strong film. I haven't seen it in a lot of years. There's another one I rented from that video store But I just remember thinking, wow, that was really powerful. Peeping Tom, Michael Powell, a proto slasher. I mean, this is a horror film in much the same vein as Psycho was a proto slasher. You know, sort of a precursor to the slasher films about a guy with a camera who ends up killing people, killing I think women as he's filming them. The Pink Panther, the one that started it all, Peter Sellers. It was originally not, I think Peter Ustinov was originally cast but couldn't do it, so they got Peter Sellers to play the role. He really is more of a supporting character in this, but he was so funny that he became the lead in the sequels. It was really about David Niven being the Pink Panther jewel thief, and it was more about him. But Peter Sellers is so funny in this that they made the sequels, you know, about his character. Pit Stop, Jack Hill's racing movie. It has Sid Haig in it. Sid Haig plays a race car driver who didn't know how to drive at the time. He had to learn to drive for his part in this. But, you know, his recent passing, you know, rest in peace, sir. But this is an early Sid Haig role. So, you know, that alone makes it worth seeing, I think. Hammer Films' Plague of the Zombies, a zombie film by Hammer. It's a good one. I haven't seen it in a while, but I like it. Playtime, Jacques Tati. I was such a fan of Mon Oncle, and I haven't seen Playtime yet. I've got to watch it, but Mon Oncle was a masterpiece, in my opinion, and I'm sure Playtime will be one as well. Lee Marvin, Point Blank. I need to rewatch this movie. It's been a while. I remember the ending scene with Carol O'Connor, in part because they play it during, what's that movie? I want to say Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, or was it maybe Z Channel, Magnificent Obsession? I can't remember which one, but you do. You see Lee Marvin is trying to collect money for a job he's done. I think he's a hitman, and he's going about it, collecting it in a very violent way. Pretty Poison, Anthony Perkins, Tuesday Weld. I reviewed this one on the blog, and I don't remember a lot about it, but it's a good one. Mel Brooks is the producers. What can I say? So many great stories about this movie. Maybe I'll go into them a little bit later. I got to move this along here, but the producers, Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder, are excellent in this. Who is it? Dick Shawn is so funny as the guy they cast to play Hitler. It's about two producers who realize they can make more money with a flop than they can with a hit. So they try to put on the worst play imaginable. They put on Springtime for Hitler, written by an ex-Nazi. They get the worst director. They hire Dick Shawn, who's a beatnik, to play Hitler. And I'll leave it at that. It's worth seeing. This has been recommended to me by somebody on Twitter. I still have not seen it. If you're watching this, my apologies. I will get to the Queens at some point. Rachel, Paul Newman. Paul Newman's one of my favorite actors, and there was a time I was just getting as many of his movies as I could. I have not seen this one yet, but it's him and Joanne Woodward, his wife, in this one. The Rain People is talked about briefly, I should say, not a lot, but in Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Francis Ford Coppola, it was a road trip sort of movie. He was filming this one, sort of a cross-country type thing, on the road. And I know James Caan is in it, and I really want to see it. I haven't yet, but I first heard about it in Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Rape of the Vampire. I have seen this. It's Jean Rollin. I love Jean Rollin's horror films. Even though they're very different, they sort of walk the line between exploitation and art house, and that's no exception. You know, I really enjoy this one. Ride the High Country, second only to The Wild Bunch as my favorite Sam Peckinpah film. I know reading the book about Sam Peckinpah that his father he based the character of one of the main characters in this on his father. God, who are the stars of this? It's not on here. Damn it. I know Randolph Scott plays one of them. Damn it. Oh, my mind is going. I can't believe I can't remember his name. He was in so many great movies. I know he played the lead in Sullivan's Travels. Who is... You're screaming at the screen right now, I know, but it's not coming to me. It's not going to come to me. A really, really good Western. And, Peckinpah, there's all this raucous stuff happening. But the best scene is when a preacher is marrying two characters, and the speech he gives during the marriage ceremony is so poignant and so strong, and it's part of Peckinpah, that he had the machismo, and he had that sort of softer side to him, and you see it in all of his movies, especially in Ride the High Country, a great Western. Romeo and Juliet, I remember seeing this in high school. It's, probably the most well-known telling of Romeo and Juliet, I think. Rosemary's Baby, what can you say? Roman Polanski's classic horror film. Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes. It's a great one. It was produced by William Castle, and it ended up William Castle, one of his biggest moneymaker ever, but it also cost him a lot. There were so many protests against it, so many religious people who were threatening him over this movie. It's a shame, but it's one that any horror fan needs to see if they haven't already. Shoot the Piano Player. This might be Truffaut's second film. I'm thinking it was. I think he made this between 400 Blows and Jules of Jim. And I have seen it, and it's a good movie. A Shot in the Dark, the sequel to the Pink Panther, and the only Pink Panther movie that does not have the words Pink Panther in the title, I believe. But it's every bit as funny. It's Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau. That's all you need to know. Skidoo, Otto Preminger's crazy movie. I've only seen this in parts as Groucho Marx playing God. Groucho Marx and Preminger did not get along. I mean, Preminger screamed at Groucho Marx like crazy, to the point that Jackie Gleason went to Preminger and goes, "Look, if you try talking to me the way you're talking to Groucho, I'm going to knock you out." But I have to see this one. I heard about it on the B-Movie Cast, and I haven't watched it yet, but I have to. The Soft Skin, I believe, is this another Truffaut film? I can't remember. I haven't seen it yet, though. The Sound of Music, classic 60s musical. I think it's the last sort of musical that was a blockbuster sensation before the collapse of what was termed, quote-unquote, old Hollywood. Spider Baby, Jack Hill's Spider Baby, such a strange movie. Another one with Sid Haig in it. A hard movie to describe, but it's one. Oh, and also Lon Chaney Jr. plays a major role in this. Black and white, so cool though. You got to see Spider Baby. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It's about just that, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre that happened in Chicago back in the 20s or 30s. It's a Roger Corman film. I think it has Jason Robards in it as Al Capone. I know George Segal plays a part in this, and I know you can see Jack Nicholson in the background at one point in a very early film role. Sweet Charity. Who was this? Bob Fosse, Sweet Charity, and it has some, I think Hey Big Spender is an awesome musical number in this one. It's based on a Fellini film. Oh, which one is it? The one that starred his wife? Oh, this is awful. I really should prepare better when I'm doing these, but Sweet Charity is a fun movie. I have not seen The Swimmer. I've heard so many good things about it. Burt Lancaster, especially his performance. Targets I have seen. This is Bogdanovich, Peter Bogdanovich's movie. Two things going on. It's about a guy who goes crazy, goes to a clock tower and starts shooting people based on an actual event in Texas. Boris Karloff plays an aging horror actor who's lamenting, the fact that his movies just aren't popular anymore. And the two stories converge at the end, but good movie. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? This is another good movie. It's set during the Depression. It's about a dance contest. Who can stay on their feet the longest? And it's very dramatic. The Time Machine, one of the great sci-fi films of all time, with Rod Taylor as H.G. Wells going backward and forward in time. So cool the way that they do this. It really is. Taylor is exceptional in this film, and it really is. The effects are top notch. It's one of the great sci-fi films of all time. One you definitely have to see. As you have to see To Kill a Mockingbird, based on the classic novel. Gregory Peck playing a lawyer defending a black man who's been accused of raping a white woman. It's clear it did not happen, but he goes and he agrees to defend him and becomes a pariah in the town, and it really follows his two children, Jem and Scout. They're the main characters in this, and sort of how they relate to their father. He's a widower. and just a, wow, great American film. And here's Tony Rome. The movie came right before Lady in Cement. Again, not Sinatra's strongest performance, but still a good detective movie. Le Trou, Jacques Becker. This is set in a prison, and what I really thought was interesting about this film was how it goes into details about sort of, what goes on in a prison, like searching the prisoners' gifts to make sure that there are no, illegal substances in them, and just the daily life of a prisoner. I mean, it really is sort of, it opened my eyes to that, and that, I thought it was a fascinating film for that alone. And Jacques Becker, I want to see more of his movies. I think I have a couple more, but I think Le Trou might be the only one I've seen thus far. But it's a really good one. The VIPs, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton. Did I see the VIPs? Oh, Rod Taylor, I think I did see the VIPs. Yeah, Orson Welles. I did see it. I guess I can't say much about it. I don't remember it, obviously, but I did see this one. I don't remember anything negative about it. Let's put it that way. Valley of Gwangi, probably the most underrated of Harryhausen's work, about people who stumble across this lost area with there are dinosaurs, dinosaurs alive, and it's a really good fantasy film. The Virgin Spring. I'm actually going to take this one out of here. I think I have Viva Las Vegas to replace it because I'm going to be sending this DVD to Joel. Gilman Joel. I promised this to him. This inspired who was it, Wes Craven to make Last House on the Left. It's that sort of story. And it's one of Bergman's great films. But this DVD will soon be on its way to Gilman Joel. Wait Until Dark. Wow, what a creepy movie with Alan Arkin. And he's so creepy in this movie. Audrey Hepburn plays a blind girl. Sort of being stalked, and yeah, it's a good one. War of the Planets, sci-fi, an Italian sci-fi film. I can't say it's one of the best, but cool effects in it. I mean, cheesy. Their effects, their models that you're looking at, but it's still kind of cool. The Wasp Woman, a Roger Corman film about a woman executive who something happens and she turns into a wasp or becomes a wasp by night or every so often. It's not all the time, but very low budget, but it's kind of a Roger Corman, early Roger Corman film, and you get what you expect from that one. Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, probably, I don't know if this is, it's very controversial. I mean, if you don't like real violence to animals, again, like I said with Cannibal Holocaust, who does? There is a scene of a pig slaughter in this film that's very graphic. There's also a long take of a traffic jam, I remember in this one. It's a strange movie. When I finally do write my book of like cinematic oddities, Weekend will be one of them that I'm going to be talking about. What's Up, Tiger Lily? I laughed so hard when I saw this. I got this on video again back when I was in high school. First movie Woody Allen directed, I think, but he really, it's almost like an MST3K where they took a Japanese spy film, wiped out the dialogue, and Woody Allen and Louise Lasser and a group of other people laid down different tracks. It is so funny. It is, I can't even begin. It's almost like airplane level insanity. It's so funny. You got to see What's Up, Tiger Lily. Mario Bava's The Whip and the Body. I have seen it. It's not quite up there, I don't think, with his, the Black Sabbath, Black Sunday. But it's Mario Bava, which means it's going to be visually amazing. Wild Angels. This might be the movie that started the whole biker phenomenon. I mean, I'm thinking it might have even been before Easy Rider, because it's a Roger Corman movie, and it's got Peter Fonda, Nancy Sinatra. I know Frank Sinatra called up Roger Corman and said, "You better take care of my daughter," because there were real Hell's Angels working on this movie. He said, "You better guarantee her safety," and I don't know what came of that, but yeah, this is a good one. It really is. Peter Bogdanovich worked second unit on this, I believe, as a second unit director on this one as well. It's a good biker film from that time period. And I think Bruce Dern and Diane Ladd, this is where they hooked up for the first time. Obviously the mother and father of Laura Dern, recent Oscar winner for Best Supporting Actress for Marriage Story. The Wild Bunch, Peckinpah's masterpiece. such a good movie about outlaws coming to terms with the fact that the West is gone and, the times are changing. They end up south of the border. The great final scene, the showdown at the end. So much great to say about this movie. It's just one of the great, not just great Westerns, great movies. And it is, for me, Peckinpah's masterpiece. Wild Guitar, Archall Jr. from EGA. Gives a good performance in this, I seem to recall. I don't remember a lot about it, but I have seen it. Will Penny, it's a drama Western with Charlton Heston. It does have some exciting scenes in it, but it's more of him with this young family. And it's one of Heston's great performances. It really is. He was so good in this one. I think it's one of his favorite movies, too, that he ever made, if I'm not mistaken. Such a good movie. And the actor who played Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite, and he was also in Monster Squad and Joysticks. I don't remember his name. I remember his filmography. I don't remember his name. Can you believe it right now? But he was a young boy in this one. And his father is actually the one who wrote and directed the movie. That's how he ended up in it. But well worth seeing. Winning, a racing movie with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Yet another Paul Newman movie I picked up that I have not seen. Women of the World, another Mondo film along the lines of Africa, Blood and Guts and Mondo Cane. Have not seen this one yet either. That brings us to our last page. Z. Costa Gavras, just a great sort of political film. It did win Best Foreign Film. I think it was up for Best Picture as well that year. Really strong stuff. And Zulu. Another movie that, it's about the British colonialism and about these British troops fighting Africans, the Zulu tribe on their homeland. And, it's a few dozen British soldiers die and thousands of Zulus die during this film. But it is such a good action movie. It's got a very young Michael Caine in it. The action is so intense. I really do like Zulu. It's just not the most, politically correct film nowadays. But if you can look past that, you're in for a treat for the action sequences, and it really is well made. And I don't remember it like totally ignoring the Zulus or making them the villains throughout the whole picture. I do remember there are some favorable moments with them, but maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments if you've seen Zulu. But it really is a great... I know Ridley Scott, I think it's his all-time favorite movie, if I'm not mistaken. All right, that brings us to the end of the 60s. Wow, an hour and a half. Please like this video if you do. Leave some comments also about the movies I talk about in here, especially the ones I haven't seen yet. Let me know what I should put at the top of my queue, or the top of my priority list, I should say. And subscribe if you have not yet. This is Dave, Dr. Shock Becker. Thank you very much. I'll see you again soon.